Yes, Prabhuji, I think now you can start.
Yes, Hare Krishna. Reading from Sri Prabhupāda-līlāmṛta, Volume 2, Chapter 60, Seattle, September 21st, 1968. The immediate reason Śrīla Prabhupada went to Seattle was that two of his disciples, Upendra and Gargamuni, had just begun an ISKCON center there and had invited him. For several years, this had been Prabhupada's method of spreading Krishna consciousness in America. He went to a city, stayed, preached, and directed his disciples. He had done so in New York, San Francisco, Boston, Montreal, Los Angeles, all with good success. As he had written in a letter of March 1968, we want to open hundreds of centers so that people may take up Krishna consciousness, and we need many enthusiastic boys and girls for carrying on this great mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Prabhupada's Guru Maharaj, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, had not mentioned Seattle or even United States when he ordered Prabhupada to preach in the Western countries. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had said the chanting of the holy names, of the Lord's holy names, Hare Krishna, would go on to every town and village of the world. The street chanters and Back to Godhead magazine distributors in Los Angeles and San Francisco wanted to try Seattle to test the chanting in the streets of a conservative city. Seattle, the home of Boeing aircraft manufacturers, had a population of 560K, a university, and several good colleges. On Prabhupada's order, the devotees went ahead to join the Seattle temple in time for Prabhupada's arrival. While Gargamuni was still desperately trying to find an apartment he could afford, the devotees received Prabhupada in a hotel room. From Prabhupada's room, the window looked out at the 600-foot tall Space Needle and the monorail leftovers from the 1962 Seattle World's Fair. The devotees squeezed into the small room as Prabhupada sat behind a low desk and pulled his harmonium to him. Should I play? He asked, smiling. They pleaded, yes, and he began playing. The fingers of his right hand moved difficultly across the keyboard while his left hand pumped the harmonium's bellows. He sang Gauranga Balte Haba Pulka Sarira Hari Hari Balte Nayana Babe Nira. Their meeting with him in the room was unhappy, but the song was not a light thing. Sorry, was happy. Yeah, the sound poured forth. Poured forth both from him and from the little harmonium. They were bhajans. He had explained to them songs of devotion. This one by Narottama Dasa Thakur. When will the time come when, while chanting Hare Krishna, there will be tears in the eyes? He played and the expression of his face in singing seemed like crying. The song, he said, meant when the mind is completely purified, freed from the material anxieties and desires, then I shall be able to understand Vrindavan and the love of Radha and Krishna, and then my spiritual life will be successful. The first night in town, Prabhupada was to drive from the hotel to the ISKCON temple, a house rented by the devotees in a quite suburban neighborhood. A devotee carpenter, Naranarayana, had done excellent work with $50, converting the living room into a temple room. Enclosed behind long red satin curtains was an impressive three-tier altar. The altar was paneled with the same cedar as the walls. The altar's bottom shelf had a brass incense holder, brass flower vases, two silver double candle holders, a conch shell, and a picture of Lord Vishnu. On the middle shelf were a black and white close-up of Prabhupada. a large color poster of Lord Chaitanya, and a simple ink drawing of Panchatattva by Prabhupada's disciples Gaurasundara and Govinda Dasi. The top shelf held the 12-inch deities of Lord Jagannath, Subhadra, and Lord Baladeva, who were clothed in simple golden satin without jewels or garlands. Around the room were nicely framed pictures. To the left of the altar was an Indian print of Gopala with his arm around a calf. Forming a border near the ceiling were several of Gurudasa's captivating black and white close-ups of Śrīla Prabhupada on morning walks in San Francisco. On the left wall was a painting of Krishna driving Arjuna's chariot. To the right of the altar was Śrīla Prabhupada's Vyasasana. The room was small. The devotees had designed a Vyasasana 3 feet high, wedged into the corner so that the room could accommodate many people. The back of the seat was cushioned with deep blue velvet inset with large and decorative golden upholstery buttons. The seat itself was gold velvet with a gold bolster pillow. A small gold velvet canopy with a fringe hung above the Vyasasana. Śrīla Prabhupada arrived at the temple accompanied by his servant Kartikeya and his secretary Govinda Dasi. Coming up the steps on the porch, they were greeted at the front door by a welcoming kirtana of devotees in the small temple room. As Śrīla Prabhupada made his way from the door towards his Vyasasana, all the devotees in the room, except for one, bowed down. The exception, standing midway between the front door and the Vyasasana, was a newcomer, a girl named Joy Fletcher, who had only met the devotees that very day. And as Śrīla Prabhupada passed by her, she also bowed down. As Śrīla Prabhupada was taking his seat on the Vyasasana, while Kartikeya adjusted the microphone and Govinda Dasi adjusted the tape recorder, the devotees sent Joy forward to offer Prabhupada a garland of red roses and red carnations. Joy had made the garland, stringing the flowers in a symmetrical pattern. But when she placed it around Prabhupada's neck, the garland fell asymmetrically. Feeling undone, she turned to go sit down. Thank you very much, said Prabhupada in a soft but deeply resounding voice. Joy Fletcher. So I sat down and listened to his lecture, but I could not understand his accent. I was struck with the impression that here was a very elderly person who had taken great difficulty to come and speak to us. I could understand there was nothing motivating in it for him. I felt very much that he didn't want to cheat me. I also had the conception that this person was inconceivably humble because of his quoting the scriptures, because of his references to his Guru Maharaj, and because of his general attitude and his soft-spoken voice. I could understand that he was not trying to impress anyone and that he was very humble and dependent on his Guru Maharaj. After the lecture, I raised my hand to ask a question. Answering 3 or 4 questions first, he finally took my question. I asked him, Sri Bhaktivedanta, how is it that this universal presence, which is humanly inconceivable, at least to me at this time, how can it have the form of Radha and Krishna? The devotees had preached to me prior to his arrival that the absolute truth, which I, from my reading in yoga philosophy, impersonally called universal presence, was actually Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and his consort, Radharani. Śrīla Prabhupada very distinctly answered by his mercy. But then he spoke loudly. You cannot make the sun rise, and similarly, you cannot make God appear before you to answer your doubts. I was thunderstruck that he chose this particular example, since only 4 months earlier, I had climbed a mountain by myself and sat there all night waiting for the dawn, when I would make the sun rise. But when dawn came, it was a cloudy day, and of course, I did not make the sunrise. The fact that out of all examples, Prabhupada chose that particular thing to answer me hit like a thunderbolt. Then his divine grace softened his voice like a rose, and indicating his disciples with a wave of his arm, he said, "But you just associate with these nice boys and girls here. Chant this Hare Krishna mantra, eat Krishna prasadam, study my books scrutinizingly, and engage yourself in a little service. And then the Lord will reveal himself to you from within your heart, in his own time, by his own sweet will, with all his name, fame, form, pastimes, paraphernalia, and entourage." Within a few days, Gargamuni found an inexpensive two-room apartment for Prabhupada. Gargamuni, who was accustomed to the Lower East Side of New York City, thought this Seattle apartment a good bargain. By New York slum standards, it wasn't bad, but there were much better places in Seattle. When Prabhupada entered with the devotees, it became obvious to everyone that the apartment was a disaster. Prabhupada went to the windows and looked out at the brick wall of the building 6 feet away. Because of this building, no sunlight could enter the room. Prabhupada looked below at the dark, dingy alley littered with garbage. The curtains in the room reached only halfway down the wall. The tiles were peeling in the bathroom. Nothing was clean. There was no bed. Anyone staying with Prabhupada would have to walk through his room to reach the bathroom. Only when Prabhupada entered with his bright transcendental presence could his disciples fully understand that the apartment was not suitable, was not at all suitable. Prabhupada, however, didn't complain. "It doesn't matter," he said. And taking his chadar and placing it on the floor, he sat down. Although the neighborhood was noisy, Prabhupada was tolerant, but he admitted, "This place is not nice." And then, looking up at the devotees in the dingy room, he asked, "Why have you put me in this dungeon?" Struck at heart by these words, the devotees knew they had to find a better place, and several of them went out to search. Why had they put me in a dungeon? Jayananda, Naranarayana, and Govinda Dasi got into the van and drove off, vowing not to return until they found a place Prabhupada would like. They moved towards the Capitol Hill area and finally found a for rent sign on the lawn of a nice house situated near a lake. Although it was a basement apartment, many ground level windows made the rooms bright and sunny. Jayananda and Govinda Dasi talked to the landlord, and Prabhupada moved in the next day. He liked the tulips lining his windows and the view down the sloping green lawn to the shore of the lake. He liked walking in the backyard from where he could see boats passing. That other place, he chuckled, was like being in the womb of the mother. And this place is like coming out into the world and seeing the light. The apartment was well furnished, and Prabhupada put his Radhakrishna deities on a dresser before the mirror, which made a nice backdrop. Every morning, Prabhupada would go on a walk, usually to Volunteer Park, where he walked by the reservoir. The path around the reservoir's perimeter was several miles long, and although some of the young men would become exhausted from the walk, Prabhupada enjoyed it. One morning, while Jayananda was walking with Prabhupada, they approached a man who had just pulled a fish out of the water. The fisherman held up his catch, dangling it as if offering it to Prabhupada. "Anyone for a fish dinner?" the man asked cheerily. Prabhupada smiled. "No, you enjoy." Prabhupada kept walking until he was past the man and then added, "and suffer." They also walked in an area filled with many rose bunches and many birds. Peacocks roamed freely. It is written in the Shastras that wherever a saintly person goes, becomes a tirtha or a place of pilgrimage. In India, our many tirthas, most of which are places where the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his great devotees enacted some Leela. There are no such tirthas, however, in America. But after Prabhupada's preaching, beginning in New York City, in places like 26th Second Avenue and Tom, Tom Tompkins Square Park, and later in Golden Gate Park at Stowe Lake, Venice Beach, or Volunteer Park, then even these American places became, for Prabhupada's followers, significant, never to be forgotten sites. Prabhupada took advantage of the presence of the traveling Sankirtan party in Seattle. He told Tamala Krishna he wanted to organize a world Sankirtana party with 12 men, 12 women, and himself going all over the world. But for the present, the devotees went out daily in the downtown city. In Seattle, citizens were astonished to see young Americans with shaven heads, saffron robes, women in sari, playing chambalas, and singing Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. The devotees would chant Hare Krishna for hours, give out cards with a Mahamantra printed on them, and sometimes bring people back to the temple. As a result, attendance was good at Prabhupada's evening lectures. With the devotees chanting on the streets during the day and Prabhupada speaking at night, the city was quickly becoming spiritualized. Therefore, each evening, the small cedar wood paneled temple room of Lord Jagannatha was filled with considerable transcendental excitement. For Prabhupada, it was very encouraging to lecture to a hall crowded with both disciples and guests. After the evening kirtana, everyone would sit down on the floor, and some people would even stand outside the house looking in and listening at the windows. Prabhupada invariably began by chanting in a strong, simple melody the refrain Govindam Adipurusham Tamam Bhajami, and everyone would repeat in chorus Govindam Adipurusham Tamam Bhajami. He would chant it half a dozen of times and then begin his lecture. Prabhupada's teaching of Lord Chaitanya had recently been published, and he often lectured by having a devotee read it out. Prabhupada would listen, and whenever he felt moved to, he would interrupt and begin speaking. This Krishna consciousness movement, Prabhupada explained, has to be understood through the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. He appeared in Bengal, a province in India 500 years ago, and he specifically preached the Krishna consciousness movement. To execute that order, we have come to your country. My request is that you try to understand this Krishna consciousness movement with all your knowledge scrutinizingly. Don't accept it blindly. We have this book, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, and other books, also many books. So try to read them. And we have our magazine, Back to Godhead. We are not sentimentalists, that we are simply dancing. Dancing has no great value. Sorry, dancing has got great value. That if you dance with us, you will feel. It is not that some crazy fellows are dancing. The most intelligent persons are dancing, and yet it is so nicely made that even a boy like here, he's a boy, he can take part. Prabhupada emphasized that Krishna consciousness was universal. It was full of sound philosophy, and yet it was very simple. The simple message was God is great, and we are his part and parcel. And to prove it, he gave simple examples. The hand is part of the body and has great value when working as part of the whole. A small screw in the typewriting machine is very valuable as long as it is working as part of the machine. Otherwise, it is useless. Similarly, unless the individual spirit soul engages in devotional service to Krishna, he is incomplete. Prabhupada spoke some basic Krishna consciousness for about half hour and then asked for questions. Always at least a few hands raised. He recognized the outsiders first. It was not unusual in those days to find young people, college students, and hippies asking cosmic questions, dabbling in yoga and Eastern philosophy. Often, however, they had many different things on their minds, including drugs, and were frequently confused. But Prabhupada, experienced with over 3 years of constant preaching to young Americans, had already heard almost anything they could possibly ask. Young man, is there communication that is not the word itself but beyond words? Perhaps a vibration reaching for the Om. I mean, does one attain a communication, something understood between you and myself and my brother, an experience like a sound, dong or ong? Is there something else beyond the verbal? Yes, Prabhupada replied, this Hare Krishna, man. Hare Krishna, Prabhupada. Yes, man. But can you tell me how this can be? How to talk that language all the time rather than English or other languages? Prabhupada, it does not matter that Hare Krishna can be sounded in Sanskrit only. You can sound it in English tone, also Hare Krishna. Is there any difficulty? These boys are also sounding Hare Krishna, just like the piano. If you touch, there is a dung. It doesn't matter whether an American is striking or an Indian or a Hindu striking or a Muslim striking. The sound is sound. Similarly, this piano, Hare Krishna, you just touch it and it will sound. That's all. Someone asked about meditation. Prabhupada asked, what do you mean by meditation? Sitting alone quickly. Sorry, sitting alone quietly. Oh, yes, Prabhupada. Yeah. How it is possible? Prabhupada asked, is there any experience that the mind is not acting when you sit silently? You have to engage your mind in something. What do you engage it in? Yes, Prabhupada replied, that is Krishna. We engage our mind in Krishna, the beautiful supreme personality of Godhead. Not only simply engaging the mind, but engaging the mind in action with the senses. Because mind is acting with our senses, your mind said, let us go to that newly started ISKCON society. So your legs carried you here. So mind, thinking, feeling, willing, these are the functions of the mind. You have to fix up your mind, not only thinking of Krishna, but also working for Krishna, feeling for Krishna. That is complete meditation. Someone asked if a Christian, by reading the Bible and following Jesus' words, required a spiritual master. As soon as you read the Bible, Prabhupada replied, that means you are following the instructions of Lord Jesus Christ. So, where is the opportunity of being without a spiritual master? I was referring to a living spiritual master, Prabhupada. You may accept the spiritual master or that spiritual master. That is a different thing, but you have to accept. When you read the Bible, that means you are following the spiritual master represented by some priest or clergyman in the line of Lord Jesus Christ. So, in any case, you have to follow a spiritual master. There's no question of being without a spiritual master. Is that clear? Many different sects of Christianity interpret the Bible in different ways. Prabhupada, there cannot be any interpretation in the Bible, then there is no authority. Just like this is a watch. Everyone has called it a watch, and if I call it a spectacle, then what is the value of my being spiritual master? I am misleading. It is a watch, and that I must say, this intelligence you must have. Who is a pseudo spiritual master and a real spiritual master? Otherwise, you will be cheated. And that is being done. Everyone is everyone is interpreting in his own way. There are thousands of editions of Bhagavad Gita, and they have tried to interpret it in their own way. All nonsense. They should all be thrown away. Simply, you have to read the Bhagavad Gita as it is. Then you will understand. If anyone can understand the clear passage, just like the Bible, God said, let there be creation, and there was creation. What is the question of interpretation? Yes, God created. You cannot create. Where is the opportunity of interpretation? Am I right? In the beginning of the Bible, it is said like that. God said, let there be creation, and there was creation. So, what is your interpretation? Tell me, what is your interpretation? Can any one of you suggest? One can explain that is a different thing. But the fact that God created, that will remain, that we cannot change. Now, how the creative process took place, that is explained in Bhagavatam. First of all, there was sky, then there was sound, then there was this, that. But the primary fact that God created, that will remain in any circumstance. Not the rascal scientist who says, oh, there was a chunk and it split up and there was this planet. Perhaps this and likely this, all this nonsense. Why perhaps? Here is a clear statement. God created, that's all, finished. Another guest said he didn't feel subordinate to anyone. Therefore, he didn't feel he had to bow down to anyone. Indirectly, he was criticizing the devotees, offering of obeisances to Prabhupada. It is a material disease, Prabhupada replied, to think that we don't have to bow down. He demonstrated logically that nature forces each of us to be subordinate, to bow down to old age, disease, death, and many other things. Guest. Okay, but who or what should I bow down to? Prabhupada. Since you are being forced to bow down, now you have to find where you shall be happy, even by bowing down. And that is Krishna. Your bowing down will not be stopped because you are meant for that. But if you bow down to Krishna and Krishna's representative, then you become happy. The disciples were submissive, and therefore only to them would a spiritual master impart knowledge of Krishna consciousness. But some of them were also doubtful, and Prabhupada had to convince them with the same logical arguments he used with the outsiders, devotee. Prabhupada, how do you logically explain to impersonalists the existence of personality of Godhead? Prabhupada began to explain the three features of the Absolute and then compared them to the three features of the sun, namely the sunshine, the sun disk, and the sun god. Using a well-known example, he thoroughly explained the existence of Supreme Person as the source of all explanations, including the impersonal Brahman. But the devotee was not yet satisfied. How does one explain to such an impersonalist the absolute truth logically? I was told Śrīla Bhakti Vinoda had such proof. Prabhupada, apart from Bhakti Vinoda, try to understand in your common sense. Painstakingly, Prabhupada explained again, this time at greater length. He quoted the Vedanta Sutra verse Janmadi Asya Yatta, explaining how everything in existence comes from the Supreme Absolute. Therefore, as we are persons, there must be a Supreme Person, the reservoir of all personality from whom everything comes. As we experience that our Father is in a prison, therefore, as a Father is a person, therefore we are all persons. Often Prabhupada was simply saying there is God and one should love God. But one student protested, why love of God should come in the form of Krishna consciousness moment? Student, if our first concern should be to serve God or Krishna, then why should there be a movement? You might get so caught up in the moment that you're forgetting about serving God. Prabhupada, why am I serving God? This movement means I'm serving God. What do you mean by serving? If Krishna says you obey me, and if I say you obey Krishna, is this not service? Student, yes. Prabhupada. So we are all doing the same business. Krishna says, surrender to me and give up all other engagement, and I shall give you protection. And we are saying the same thing, that you surrender to Krishna and you will be happy. So we are voluntarily giving service to Krishna. Preaching work is the best service. If you preach rightly, if you preach wrongly, that is disservice. You have to simply say the same thing as Krishna. Student, but the movement might get it in the way of serving Krishna. Prabhupada, it is service to Krishna because we have understood that Krishna wants, we are preaching that it is service to Krishna because we have understood what Krishna wants. We are preaching the same thing. Student, was there always a kind of moment, Prabhupada? Yes, the moment is always there. Just like Bhagavad Gita, just like in the Bhagavad Gita it is said, my dear Arjuna, whenever people are misguided and there's too much irreligiosity, at that time I appear myself. The material world is such that if something is set right, still sometime it will be distorted. Therefore, a moment is required whenever there's deterioration of the real truth. But it is the same moment, not a new moment. The moment means God is here. He is great and we are all subordinate. Our duty is to abide by the order of God, then we are happy. The moment is simple. The same moment was preached by Lord Krishna. The same moment was preached by Lord Jesus Christ. The same moment we are also preaching. Simply accepting the authority or the greatness of the Supreme Lord and engaging oneself. That's all. There is nothing new. Don't try to see something new. It is the oldest because God is the oldest. You are also the oldest, and your relationship is also the oldest. Therefore, the moment is also the oldest. But the process adopted is suitable for this time. That is also not new, not manufactured. It is recommended for this age, just like during the winter season. The process is to protect your body from being affected by cold. Similarly, in this age, Kali Yuga, it is recommended that God realization is only possible by this chanting of Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I think we can stop here, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, maybe you can read for 5 more minutes. 9:10 we will stop.
Sure. Yes, Prabhuji. Sorry, Prabhuji.
Okay, Prabhuji.
Many of the youngsters would try to catch Prabhupada in contradictions. One boy noted Prabhupada's statement that it was natural for a child to drink milk and not eat the meat of an animal. The boy argued if Prabhupada's emphasis was on being natural, then is it natural for a child to grow up, shave his head, and serve God, or was that just another form of socialization? Another challenger asked why the International Society for Krishna Consciousness was incorporated. Another asked if the sadhus in India who wore long hair and wandered in the woods needed spiritual masters. The question revealed the guests' uneasiness. Prabhupada was demanding a full commitment to the truth. They could understand that if they accepted that he was presenting the truth, then they too, like the bright faced disciples sitting beside them in the crowded temple room, should bow down to Prabhupada and Lord Jagannatha and join the movement, shave their heads, and go out chanting Hare Krishna. At least that was the implication. So, those who deeply wanted to avoid austerity, the surrender, the uprooting of a whole lifetime of illusion, sought out the flaws, the possible contradictions. But kind and lenient though he was, Prabhupada, never demanding that they shave their heads or live in a temple, continued to defeat their doubting arguments, expose the weakness of their aesthetic reasoning, and smash the folly of their material desires. He ruled forth as Krishna's representative, speaking from the blue and gold velvet Vyasasana in the front room of the Seattle house. Woman, I wish to see proofs of afterlife in writing so that I can read it and study it and examine it carefully. Is it available in writing? Prabhupada, read Bhagavad Gita. You will understand everything. Woman, that's 68 volumes. Prabhupada, no, Bhagavad Gita is one volume only. 18 chapters, 700 verses. You can read it in 3 days. It is not very difficult. We have published Bhagavad Gita as it is. And I think if you read it, you will get so many nice information. After reading Bhagavad Gita, you read Srimad Bhagavatam. Then you get further enlightened. Then you read teachings of Lord Chaitanya and you get further enlightened. And for general information, we have this Back to Godhead you can read. It is not that simply we are talking. We are backed by sufficient knowledge and literature. And so it went into the evening, 9 o'clock turned to 10 o'clock, 10 o'clock to 10:30. Is Bhakti Yoga for everyone? What about Kundalini Yoga? Why did Krishna ask Arjuna to fight? What about Christ consciousness? What about Trinity? Prabhupada was completely absorbed in defeating arguments and answering questions about Krishna, a samadhi of debate on behalf of his Lord Krishna. Yes, he did expect them, if they were gentlemen, to accept his presentation as correct and to make real commitment to Krishna consciousness. So here is the offering, Prabhupada said. Take Krishna consciousness. Now it is your choice. If you can take it, it is good. If you don't take it, that is your misfortune. Is there any difficulty to accept our formula? I ask all of you, is there any difficulty? I am asking this. You have asked so many questions of me. Is there any difficulty to accept this formula? The assembled guests and devotees murmured in reply, no. So why don't you take it? Prabhupada laughed. It is so simple, nice. Try to understand by your knowledge. We are not pushing forcibly. You have got your intelligence, argument, logic, everything, but you will find it sublime. The author of Chaitanya Charitamrita says that we are placing it for your judgment, not that we are pushing it by force. Sometimes it is said that Mohammedans propagated their religion by holding a sword in one hand and a Quran in another hand. Either you accept Quran or there is sword for you. Krishna consciousness is not like that. It is placed for your judgment. And if you like, you can accept. Otherwise, I came here empty-handed. I shall go back empty-handed. There's no loss, no gain. Prabhupada laughed with the satisfaction of the completely surrendered servant. Then he asked them to chant Hare Krishna. Tamala Krishna, at that point, I could recognize that Prabhupada was my complete Lord and Master. Whenever he would get up from his Vyasasana, I would just grip his feet and hold them and hold them. I would hold his feet at my head and I wouldn't let him walk at all. I was so eager to be at Prabhupada's lotus feet. I wanted to be with him as much as I could. I would feel very torn apart when he would go to another temple. I remember sometimes after the program, he would finish eating a piece of fruit and throw a peel on the floor. We would all jump for it and fight with each other in front of the altar and Prabhupada. We would be scrapping around like little puppies. Prabhupada would lean back and laugh. He thought we were making very nice advancements by this. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much for reading yet another intensive conversation.
Yes, Prabhuji. No, that's Prabhuji. Now I could not really focus on reading and understanding, grasping. Very difficult, Prabhuji.
Yes. I can correlate.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Yes, Prabhuji, but
So,
very blissful, Prabhuji, and especially the way Prabhupada embraces Jesus Christ, and actually a lot of details are there, Prabhuji. It's very difficult to recollect, but
yeah.
staying in such a average room, that too Prabhupada for all his austerity, right? The way he had done that, or also answering to the
Yes.
question of this student, and she also told Prabhupada picked up the exact example of the sunrise, and she experienced the same thing of the sunrise that captivated, and lot of questions, and also this on this Mohammedan Prabhuji. I don't know if you saw the news, Prabhuji, just 2 hours back.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
Kashmir attack.
exactly. And
Yeah.
they had clearly asked, "Are you a Hindu?" They have asked the men to
Yeah.
remove their pants to verify, and they have shot them dead. So these cases have not changed over the last many years, but
Yeah.
Prabhupada kind of brings a bit, and he says, I came empty-handed, I will go empty-handed. That's our Sanatana Dharma, right, Prabhuji? We don't
Mm.
I think we are very kind people, and Prabhupada leading it from the front. And again, the prasadam of the devotees, devotees taking Prabhupada's prasadam, reminds me of Rishabh Prabhu, right? So he always is next to Sudhaka Prabhu, waiting for the plate to get empty. So,
Yes, nice example, Prabhuji. Yeah.
yes, Prabhuji. And also they say why it should be a movement, right? Why it is a
Mm,
movement. And Prabhupada says that was a beautiful thing, Prabhuji, because even I had thought, like, it's International Society of Krishna Conscious Movement, right? The way
mm,
Prabhupada said, when Lord Krishna told yatha yatha idhar pasya
mm.
patranaya sadhana vinashaya sadhushkratam, right, Prabhuji? Whenever there is a uprise of adharma, he will
Yes, he
come.
will.
That's a moment, right? And beautifully Prabhupada linked, really, Prabhuji, at that ripe
Mm.
age of 68, such sharpness, Prabhuji. We are getting tired even at 8:30 to even read and
Yes.
grasp. Yes, Prabhuji. 10:30, and miraculous, Prabhuji. It's still a miracle why our Indian society didn't accept Prabhupada. Maybe he was definitely born to bring, our Eastern philosophy to the West, of course, Prabhuji. I think that's why,
Yes, yes, Prabhuji. I think the yeah, valid point, Prabhuji. I mean, the only thing is like if someone can take some time to just understand what Prabhupada did with an
exactly,
open, submissive mind,
exactly, Prabhuji.
then they will realize the magnitude of the
Exactly,
achievement which Prabhupada did. Like imagine sitting in a hall where the Americans or the Westerners, they don't have any background. They can ask any sort of question to Prabhupada,
exactly, Prabhuji.
and they have asked all questions like why we have to accept this, why not that. But
Totally.
Prabhupada kept on answering. I mean, at that age, question after the other, I mean, answer is giving answer
Yes,
after the other,
yes,
and that way to defeat their argument, and then still say, okay, finally you accept it, but scrutinize yourself, use your intelligence.
beautiful point,
So
Prabhuji. Yeah, and
that,
also, yeah, the
yes,
student
Prabhuji.
also told Prabhuji that I feel he's not here to cheat me. He's not here to take anything away from
Mm,
this student, right? So this
yeah,
joy,
yeah, joy
joy.
culture. Yeah.
So that is like, Prabhuji. Are we on live stream, Prabhuji, or? Yeah.
Yes, 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 yes.
Okay,
No
okay,
problem.
okay, okay. Maybe after the live stream, after you stop it, I want to discuss on one more topic, Prabhuji, on the TOVP also. But here, she clearly told that uh,
Mm,
she does not feel that Prabhupada is there to snatch anything from or something. So very
yes,
beautiful, Prabhuji. And Krishna
yes,
also made nice arrangements, Prabhuji. He tested Prabhupada with this room, but then later there was
mm,
a very nice, beautiful room that
yes,
the
yes, yes,
nice all the tulip flowers and other things. So,
yes, yes.
very nice, Prabhuji. Yeah.
Yes, Prabhuji, I think this is valid point. I mean, I remember in during Sri Ram Navami, there was one statement given by Omkareshwar Prabhu regarding what is the difference between Rama and Krishna.
Uh-huh.
That is something which I always remember that for Ram Navami we fast only half a day and then we have prasadam.
Yes,
But for Krishna Janmashtami we have to fast till night 12 and then have prasadam, which means for Krishna full surrender is needed.
exactly, Prabhuji, exactly, exactly,
So that is why I mean Krishna keeps testing us so that we would surrender to him completely. Like uh, there is no excuse there. So this
exactly,
is what we all have to strive for to get that complete surrender.
exactly, Prabhuji.
Uh,
Prabhuji.
yes, Prabhuji. Yeah, nice, Prabhuji. So I will end the live streaming and then we will,
Yes,
yeah, we can discuss.
yes, Prabhuji.
वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनन्तकोटिवैष्णव